Welcome to Heartland for Children's Let's Talk About It podcast, where we provide education and resources for family matters in Polk, Highlands, and Hardee counties. We're so glad that you've joined us. So now, let's talk about it.
Welcome to Heartland for Children's Let's Talk About It podcast. My name is Natalia Clemens. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist at Heartland for Children, and we are here in the Victim Services Center at Peace River for our domestic violence victims. And I'm here talking with Kirsten Pindar. She is the Director of Victim Services here at Peace River. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here.
I really appreciate it. We've been walking the space and just learning a little bit more about services for our domestic violence victims and survivors. And Kirsten, if you could just, even give us a little bit of background on yourself, tell us a little about yourself and what brought you to working here.
I actually started my career in New York. I went to college in New York, and I decided eventually to move to Florida because my parents were getting older, and I was working with individuals with disabilities. And when I moved to Florida, I decided to kind of switch careers a little bit and work in domestic violence, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And it became a huge passion of mine. And I absolutely felt like it was my calling.
Yeah.
And ever since I fell into the field, I just wanted to do everything I could to continue to advocate for individuals with that have encountered domestic violence.
Yeah.
So it just kind of carried me through. And now I'm working here, which this agency is absolutely amazing. Not only am I overseeing domestic violence, but I'm also overseeing rape recovery, which is also such an amazing task. And it's such a need in this community,
Absolutely.
As is domestic violence, and it's a community issue. So I couldn't be more thankful. And as I was saying, this agency is just so wonderful. It offers so many different things that I couldn't be more thankful.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the point of this podcast, is that we talk about, some things, some resources and educational resources to families, but we also talk about the hard things, the things that are needed for victims and for people in our community who need these important life-saving services. So let's talk a little bit about domestic violence, because when people tend to think about domestic violence, they just think, a marriage. They think two people fighting or arguing, and then it turns physical. Can you give us a description or a better understanding of what domestic violence is?
Yeah, absolutely. So domestic violence is, like you were saying, a common myth is it's just between a married couple. Domestic violence has been expanded to a family member. So it can be a mother, a father, a brother, sister. It can be someone, even a roommate. So they have really expanded the definition of domestic violence. It is not just women that are affected by domestic violence. It can be an intimate partner. So it affects men, it affects women, it affects children, it affects the entire family. It is a family dynamic. So people really need to understand that when there is domestic violence in the household. So
it impacts more than just the people involved in it. It impacts a group of people.
Absolutely.
Everyone connected.
Absolutely.
What are some additional common myths about domestic violence?
That it only affects women. That's a big myth. There's a lot of myths about shelter, that shelter seems to be like a hurricane shelter type setting, like it's 3 hots and a cot. That's not the case.
Gotcha.
Shelter is designed like somewhat of a housing type setting. There are rooms designed for that individual coming in. Some shelters share rooms, some do not. There's a kitchen, so families can cook And
you stated family, so it can be more than just one person. It can be the children.
Oh, absolutely.
A part of it as well.
Yeah, and some shelters like ours, we allow pets as well.
Okay.
So it's very hard for individuals to leave their pets at home.
Right.
And if it's a high lethality case, which means there's a high level of likelihood for death, the pet is often at risk.
Gotcha.
So we do take the pets as well. People don't want to leave their pets at home.
Yeah.
I love my pets too, so
Yeah,
I would never leave my pet at home.
It really speaks to making sure that individual has a stable environment, that already that person's life is turned upside down, but to keep some things consistent and stable for that healing process, that's really great to know. What are some of the signs of domestic violence?
There are different types of domestic violence. It's not just physical.
Okay.
There's emotional, psychological, physical, financial. Those are things to kind of look for. If someone is repeatedly putting you down, those are red flags.
Yeah.
Calling you names, being overly controlling, not letting you talk to certain people, isolating you, keeping you away from your friends and family, wanting to be with you all of the time. Those are things to watch out for. It's happening at a younger and younger age. Teens need to really be paying attention because they're dating younger and younger.
Yeah.
And these red flags are happening.
Yeah, because this domestic violence isn't just adults. We're talking about dating violence as well. We're
Absolutely.
talking about teenagers and younger children, but especially for those for teenagers in romantic relationships that don't know the red flags.
Yes.
That's a very big deal.
Absolutely. And we see it unfortunately more frequently than we would like.
Yeah.
That's why we have a prevention advocate.
Okay.
Our advocate goes into the schools and tries to teach the red flags and the signs, and to highlight some of these things that are occurring early, so that these folks can be aware. And it's not just young women, it's young men too.
Wow, yeah.
That are seeing these things happen.
Right.
So it's really important that these signs are noticed quickly,
right,
to avoid unhealthy relationships.
So like if I'm a student and I don't have a safe place at home to talk about what's happening, how do I get help? How would I reach this prevention advocate or reach out to Peace River Center?
So there's a couple different ways. I mean, if they're comfortable talking to a counselor, they can do that. If they're not, they can always reach out to us directly. They can go on a website. Our website is peacerivercenter.org, and they can get our contact information that way. There's also an escape button on there if they're uncomfortable, and they can click that and it'll all go away immediately. If they want to call the hotline, they can call our Lakeland hotline, and it's 24/7, and that number is 863-413-2700. And if they're in Hardee, Highlands, they can call 863-386-1167.
One of the questions that come to mind when I think of someone who's reaching out for help, there is the fear that the other person is going to retaliate, or the fear that they could they are trying to hurt themselves, and so that stops the person from reaching out for help. What would you say to that?
We have a very in-depth safety plan that we would do with the person. A lot of times when a person is fearful of reaching out, someone will call on their behalf and explain that these things are happening. So we even safety plan with that person on their behalf and explain that these are things that you can do on their behalf. Unfortunately, until that person calls, we're kind of limited to do anything further, but we can do an intake once the person calls, and we can do further counseling with them. But we try and safety plan even with the person on the phone to avoid anything happening to that individual. We want to ensure that everyone is as prepared, is safe as possible, because again, this is a community issue. It's not just an individual issue. It can happen to anybody at any time. 1 in 3 women are affected and 1 in 4 men. So those are really high statistics. It's a wild number.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, what are some of the barriers that you see to people coming and asking for help?
There's a number of barriers. I think that stigma is definitely a huge barrier. People are definitely embarrassed that they've been a statistic. When it's time for shelter, because there's definitely a time people need shelter, they feel like they've failed, or that they have this idea in their head of what shelter would look like. Even if you explain what shelter entails and how it can benefit them. And when you get into shelter, it's an opportunity for them to really save and have a really empowerment-based programming to move forward. There's, with men, it's also that embarrassment piece, and that this didn't happen. This shouldn't happen. Or if it's a male relationship, this is just okay. This is a normal thing. Men can hit men. It's the same with women. Woman relationship. This is okay because we're women, and this is just a normal thing. It's okay for women to hit women or treat each other poorly. Also, it's a family dynamic issue, so they've seen this growing up, and this is just a normal thing.
Right. This
to
is
come
all
forward.
I knew. This is how I've grown up. I mean, this is what, this is how my family, we interacted with each other. Oh, this is our culture.
Culture is another piece. It's normal for us to just treat each other this way because in our culture, this is what we do. We hear that quite frequently. So there's a lot of things that play into it. And people often believe that it's an economic status thing, and we get folks that need help even if they have
no matter
financial
what socioeconomic background you come from.
Yes,
it does not matter. This can affect anyone,
and that's a problem too. So people that tend to come from a higher status tend not to report because of, again, the stigma. So they don't want to, if they're well known, they don't want that aired. So they'd rather put up with the abuse than losing that lifestyle. So
it sounds like a lot of hiding.
Yes.
A lot of really isolated. Do you have can you think of any stories, something that sticks out in your mind of someone who was in a situation that was really abusive, but they were how Peace River was able to help them, come out of that?
So we had a woman come to us not too long ago. She came in and she had bruises from her chin, like both sides of her chin, down to the bottom of her ankles, broken ribs, things of that nature. Not only was she, physically battered, but she was emotionally broken completely. And she came in to outreach from LPD, and she had, she was wavering. She wasn't sure.
She was scared.
Completely. She wasn't sure if she was going to, she really thought she wanted to flee the state, which we were willing to help her do. But we couldn't get her out of the state because she was not in any condition to fly or travel.
Wow.
So we offered her shelter until she healed. So she was initially willing to go, and then she changed her mind and went back. She did come back to outreach in the next couple days. She was able to escape, and we, with our safety planning. So we held her at shelter, I shouldn't say held her, because they can do whatever, you know, that's completely their choice. So we helped her at shelter. We did our empowerment-based programming, worked with her, counseled her, and she was able to go to her support system out of state once she worked through her process, and she decided to stay longer once she realized she was ready to go. She didn't want to go immediately. She wanted to work through the process.
I feel like that's really key. Is it that Peace River is really helping that individual create that new support system? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it's really important, especially if they don't have family or friends. It's really important to learn how to become independent and it build that confidence back that they just don't have. When someone comes in that's completely broken, it is so hard to even know who you are or who you were. That's really what happens. That emotional and psychological piece is so damaged.
Yeah.
So you don't know who you are. Or what you could even become. We've had women that have never been allowed to work become nurses. We've had women start their own companies. And it's really amazing to see how far some of these folks can go when they have just been built up from being so damaged and broken to having that.
So if I am coming in, maybe it's just even coming into the Victim Services Center here or the rape recovery, what can I expect to find when I come into, what does it look like?
So in our outreach services, we have a number of different services that we offer. We offer, we have a court advocate.
Okay.
Her responsibility is to assist with the injunction process. Okay. We also have an injunction attorney. She actually helps move through the injunction, get the injunction granted. Now the court advocate helps she'll support the entire injunction process. She'll help fill out the injunction paperwork, because that can be complicated for folks that are highly emotional. It's an emotional process.
The legal jargon.
It's a lot.
The feeling, if you're coming in and you don't even have an identity, you're exhausted, just to have an advocate within court.
Yes.
Explaining the process to you.
Yeah, and it's a lot, and she'll be there every step of the way. So there's a probability you're going to see the abuser, and you're going through that motion of the legality, and what
if there's kids involved?
There's a lot of times there are kids involved, so she'll help you with that entire process, and she'll give you the resources and the tools and help you through that piece of, if you want a divorce, if you're married, if you're not married, the custody piece, if there's no custody, what's next, immigration, she'll help you with that. So there's a lot of different parts to the whole court process. So she helps with all of that. We also have a relocation advocate. So she helps find housing, whether you're in shelter or out of shelter. So we have relocation documentation that we have to complete for the Office of Attorney General. And if you meet the qualifications, which they're pretty tight, then they will give you back $1,000. But you have to already have your lease, and it's basically a reimbursement program type of thing. But our relocation advocate helps you manage all of those things up front. So she helps find all of these different places, because it's so hard to find affordable housing now.
Yeah.
And that is one of our biggest struggles for our folks, is finding a place that is manageable to live and still pay your other bills or even pay rent. I mean, it's gotten so outstanding. Our relocation advocate does all that, and then she also checks in with the folks throughout the process and helps keep them to ensure that they're still getting the services they need throughout the time they want to remain in outreach.
Okay.
So we also offer classes. So if they want to attend domestic violence classes to learn a little bit more about domestic violence, they can attend those. We offer groups, so they can come in the evenings and do groups once a month, and that's really therapeutic. The groups are all empowerment based, and they do activities during the groups, and then the women often find that they have a lot in common with each other, whether their stories are similar or not, but they tend to get this sense of camaraderie by the stories that they tell. And it's not always storytelling, it's just sometimes it's just what happened that day. That can be like a huge support. We have groups, and we have it's called a CPI advocate. So if there's DCF cases, that CPI advocate will work very closely with that individual to help them navigate the DCF process, because the DCF process can be very challenging for individuals, and they will help them work through their case plan and advocate on the client's behalf. So that's been found to be very, very fruitful for the client. And they also provide them counseling throughout the whole process. We offer counseling. We do initial assessments, and we do prevention. So we have a prevention advocate here as well. And then we have donations. So anyone can go through the donations we offer, as long as they're an outreach client.
Gotcha. So like if I'm in need of clothes for myself, clothes for my kids, just, items, because maybe I had to leave and I wasn't able to take anything with me. And I needed something in the intermediate. Got it. Okay.
Clothing, hygiene products, hair dye. Anything of that nature. We even have furniture. Our community relations team works really hard to get us furniture, so we're able to provide even our clients that have moved out into their new homes furniture, so they can furnish their homes, which is really, really amazing when we have that opportunity. We make sure our clients always have clothing. So we get wonderful donations from our community. So
wonderful. My hope in today and talking to you was that anybody who was listening, whether it is that individual that maybe is in that isolated, a fearful state, that they could hear the services, being okay with taking that next step. Another thing that I was hoping today is that anybody who wants to support Peace River, that if they wanted to donate, that they would know how to do that. And so what's the best way that they can donate to you all?
So they can definitely contact our community relations team. Ileana is Ileana Nis. She is the director. She can contact and reach out. They can also contact me, and I will put them in the right direction. They can contact me at any time. And like I said, our website is www.peacerivercenter.org. All of our information is on there, and it's really easy to navigate. It will show you how to donate on there as well. But yes, we always have a really high need, because we have, surprisingly, a lot of clients, and we make sure they get their needs met. And it seems like we always are running out of products and things that we always want to do better, you know? So that's my goal, is to always do better.
Well, Kirsten, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today about Peace River, the services, but also what you do. I am inspired by you, and I just want, I want to be the kind of person in our community that continues to advocate for individuals that need that help. And you just seem to be somebody with open arms, willing to help others. So thank you so much for your heart.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That means a lot.
Thank you for listening to Heartland for Children's Let's Talk About It podcast. There is a great need for foster families who are willing to open their hearts and homes to teens, sibling groups, and children with special needs. To learn more, check out the description for resources or visit heartlandforchildren.org.